The project we're going to be working on today is a 2013 Honda Rancher 420. We're going to be doing a complete engine rebuild. We will be replacing the crankshaft. This will be a very detailed video. All the work will be performed by a certified mechanic. He's been doing it for over 30 years. We've already removed the top end off this engine before we decide to shoot the video. So the video does start with the top end removed. Beyond that point, we will not leave anything out of this video. If you want to do this project yourself, you will be able to reference this video. We will not leave anything out. If this video is helpful to you, please click like on this YouTube video, and please subscribe to me if this video is helpful to you. I ordered OEM Honda crankshaft. Got it new in the box here. I got gasket set A and B. Okay, we got the footboards off. I didn't mention, but you'll definitely need some Ziploc bags and a Sharpie. Try to keep everything separated. There's a lot going on. We are removing all the cables, the wire, starter cable. Footboards are off. Kind of self-explanatory. Let you figure out how to get all the wiring off. There's two plugs here. I'm just going to show you just so you don't break these plugs. They break real easy. I guess they're for the starter charging system. But the gray plug, right here where my thumb is at, pushes in. And you'll feel it click. You might have to take a flat blade screwdriver just so you don't, to give you a little more leverage. That pushes in. Take a pair of pliers, put them right here. Be careful, don't break this plug. It's fragile and it'll pull apart. The white one plugs in like so. It lifts towards you. It comes towards you. Pull it out. Alright, unless there's some type of trick, we didn't want to break anything for this front drive shaft. So we took there's 3 bolts that mount the front differential. We just took the front bolts out and go ahead and roll that front differential, and they give you enough play and the shaft will just slide off. Okay, we just got the shaft out. There's actually 4 bolts to hold that front differential. It did take 2 of us to remove that shaft. One of us held the front differential and kind of pulled it forward once we removed the differential mounting bolts. The other pulled the shaft and slid it over. If you look at the shaft, this is toward the engine part right here. It's on a spring and it does move forward, but it just wasn't enough to get it off. But there's no clips or anything you have to remove for that front shaft. The rear drive shaft, once we took that out, we were able to shift the motor forward, and the drive shaft came apart right here. See, I got it apart. The motor's still kind of laying on it, but it just slid out. So we're about to remove the engine now. The motor's out. The motor goes out of the frame on the left side. We've got our workspace prepared, and we're going to be taking the engine down. Okay, we're just going to kind of fast forward through this stuff here, but we removed these 2 bolts for the starter. We're going to take all the bolts off all the way around and remove that cover. Alright, we removed those bolts. He's just lightly tapping on it to remove the cover. But alright, gear stuff going crazy.
Starter gear.
Starter gear.
That looks like the reverse gear. Yeah, stuck in there.
There it goes.
Okay. That's your front cover and stator. Rear cover and stator.
Shim right there. Okay, pulling out some shims.
And there is a taper on one side, not on the other. I don't know what it does because it's a transmission shaft, the transmission drive gear.
Little shim right here. Reverse gear.
The drive shaft. And that's what, this is the output shaft.
Impact pack, 17 millimeter. There you go. Pulling apart the front engine cover now. We already removed the water pump cover. We did have a drain pan. A little bit of water came out. Alright, prying the front cover loose.
Cover.
Marker here, and there's the index here. Top dead center.
Where the cam goes. And now, we're going to remove this. Alright, make sure that who's ever doing this, there's a lock tab right here on this nut. And if you don't bend this lock tab up, it'll tear up the end of the threads. So you got to bend that up. Like that. And get it unlocked. Same on this one.
Alright, 27 millimeter.
See, there are different types. Okay. And these are different sizes, so you can't mix them up. Got it? You got to put some pressure to it. All right. The clutch is press fitted on. It's got some splines right here. You may tap it, loosen it up with a small ball peen hammer, get it where it will break loose, then you can pull it out of the hole. Comes out as one assembly, one unit. Goes together like that. That's to take off the PTO, the power takeoff clutch. Then come up to the shaft. This will be part of the shifting mechanism that activates the driven clutch.
Put this in the clutch bag.
Now, this is a little bit tricky. We'll show you when we put it back together how it goes together. There's a shim that's on the back of the clutch hub. It goes right here. Be careful when you take it off. It will fall off if you don't see it. It goes right there on the back of the clutch hub. Then carefully, just remove the clutch hub off of there. There's a collar on the back with a bushing on it. Just be careful from there and keep it all in one piece, and we'll show you when we reinstall it how to put it back together. Okay. This also is your drive gear on the crankshaft. Is it recording? It also has a shim on the back, so be careful when you take that off. You don't drop the shim or it doesn't fall out. That's very important for the spacing of the crank gear. Now be careful when you're on the shift mechanism. The shift shaft goes through the engine through here. You want to lift this spring out of this retainer right here. Make sure that that's down. So when you pull this off, that all stays together in one piece. You can kind of clip it like that just to keep it together.
Put it right in front of the camera. And that's the spring you removed right there.
It goes
just
in this
kind of
tank.
lifted it up.
And that is on the shift drum itself, so that stays there. And there's also a shim here on the shift shaft. Now the shift shaft will slide out of the engine, so just be careful when you put it back together. It has to come all the way in and in the proper position. The shift shaft slides in and out from the, well, it goes in from the, comes in from the rear. So what you'll have is there's also a shim that lays against the case. Just be sure you make sure that that's on there when you put it back together. It goes behind this, even though I have it in front. And it comes out the rear like that. This shim actually goes behind the drum plate and goes against the case. Alright, we're going to remove the flywheel. You're going to need a flywheel puller. You can get them at your local Honda shop. I want to say it's a 24 millimeter by 1.5. If you have a bolt that size, will work also. And that is it. We're down to the crankcase. Ready to pull out, split the case, and pull the crankshaft out. Removing the cam chain, what you would call, I guess you would say, the cam chain tensioner. In this case, it's a direct drive off of the crankshaft to the camshaft. That's the tensioner. Now the chain is loose, cam is right there.
Got it on top dead or?
Yeah. What we're going to do is there is a index mark on it also, so when we go to set it up, we'll be able to index it and put it back where we want it. Alright, now we're down to removing the case, and we're going to go with the transmission and take everything we need. We're going to remove the crankcase bolts. First we're going to remove this we're going to remove the chain off of here. Alright, what we're going to do is we're going to remove this bolt, cam holder. It's behind the cam. It's a 12mm head. It's an 8mm bolt. Once you remove that, as a timing chain tensioner, you're going to slide the cam out, and the cam is going to come out there, and you're going to remove it with the chain, just like that. There's the cam. There's no shim, it just rides in a bearing in the back there. And there's the cam. You can leave the chain on it, it doesn't matter. Just put it together like that. On the clutch side, there's two crankcase bolts, one hidden under here under the engine boss and one here in the case. Once you remove those, you can turn the engine around and follow the pattern of the crankcase bolts and remove them. There's also two inside the flywheel, behind the flywheel cover. Just follow them around, remove all the crankcase bolts all the way around. Alright, we're going to split the case now, and what we have here is the star plate for the shift drum and the mechanism that changes it. This one bolt holds it all on. If you look at it carefully, it has a pin and it has an alignment hole. It only go on one way. And you also have, on this star plate, you only have that. So it lines in that, this plate lines up on that star that way. So it only goes one direction. So also, pull that off or you can't split the case. Once you have that off, you can take a screwdriver and bump it with a rubber hammer to get a slight crack in the case haft. And you can pry the case haft very gently. There's no gasket, so be real careful not to mar the surface. If you mar the surface, you'll have an oil leak. Once you get that off, take your rubber mallet and tap the transmission shaft, keeping the transmission shaft and the crankshaft into the rear of the engine. Once you have that done, you can pull the case off. Put your finger on the transmission shaft, slide the case half off. And then you'll be at the transmission itself and the crankshaft. There's a shim right here and a collar. And be very careful if this comes off that you line that oil hole up with this. See that hole right there? If you put this on wrong, like that, you'll burn the transmission up. So make sure that you have that hole lined up when you put this back on. Like this shim goes here. So we're going to put that back together right there just to give you an idea of what it looks like with the case split. Go ahead. The next thing you want to do once you have it split, you want to notate that this has an index mark on this counterbalance, which is right here, and also an index mark on the crankshaft. This index mark and that index mark, if you can see plainly where the light is in my finger, has to line up when you install the crankshaft. If not, then the engine will be severely out of balance and vibrate itself to pieces.
Mark there. Where was the other mark? Or that was it?
Right here on the plow. See it right here, the index mark.
Okay, you're showing the mark. Okay.
Those two marks go together right there.
Rotate it backwards a little bit.
So you can see it right there.
There you go.
It goes around like that. That's the mark. Here's the mark on the crank.
Got it.
So it's plain.
Alright, it's recording.
Gonna lightly tap it with a big hammer. We're gonna knock this out. And that puts the crankshaft and the counterbalance in our hand.
So while he was tapping that, he was holding his hand on the transmission
To hold all the gears in.
to keep the gears from coming loose.
Now you can take the reverse gear off if you like, which goes back here. It's going to put on there when you put it back on. But you can take it off so it doesn't fall off when you're doing this, when you're tapping the crankshaft out. You just set it to the side. And there we have split case and crankshaft.
And that completes disassembly.
And that completes the assembly. Now it's time to wash the engine and prepare for reassemble.